Good day, this is Professor Will, CBMD PhD. Today is Tuesday, March 31st, 2020. It is 5:45 and 48 seconds a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is a continuation lecture on black holes part 2. So let's get started here.
How big is a black hole? There are at least two different ways to describe how big something is. We can say how much mass it has, or we can say how much space it takes up. Let's talk first about the masses of black holes. There is no limit in principle to how much or how little mass a black hole can have. Any amount of mass at all can in principle be made to form a black hole if you compress it to a high enough density. We suspect that most of the black holes that are actually out there were produced in the deaths of massive stars. And so we expect those black holes to weigh about as much as a massive star. A typical mass for such a stellar black hole would be about 10 times the mass of the Sun, or about 10 to the power 31 kilograms. Here I'm using scientific notation. 10 to the power 31 means that 1 with 31 zeros after it. Astronomers also suspect that many galaxies harbor extremely massive black holes at their center. These are thought to weigh about 1,000,000 times as much as the Sun, or 10 to the power 36 kilograms. The more massive a black hole is, the more space it takes up. In fact, the Schwarzschild radius, which means the radius of the horizon, and the mass are directly proportional to one another. If one black hole weighs 10 times as much as another, its radius is 10 times as large. A black hole with a mass equal to that of the Sun would have a radius of 3 kilometers. So a typical 10 solar mass black hole would have a radius of 30 kilometers, and a 1,000,000 solar mass black hole at the center of our galaxy would have a radius of 3 million kilometers. 3 million kilometers may sound like a lot, but it is actually not so big by astronomical standards. The Sun, for example, has a radius of about 700,000 kilometers, and so the supermassive black hole has a radius only about 4 times bigger than the Sun. What would happen to me if I fell into a black hole? Let's suppose that you get into your spaceship and point it straight towards the 1,000,000 solar mass black hole in the center of our galaxy. Actually, there is some debate about whether our galaxy contains a center black hole, but let's assume it does for the moment. Starting from a long way from the black hole, you just turn off your rockets and coast in. What happens? At first, you don't feel any gravitational forces at all. Since you are in free fall, every part of your body and your spaceship is being pulled in the same way, and so you feel weightless. This is exactly the same thing that happens to astronauts in Earth's orbit, even though both astronauts and space shuttle are being pulled by the Earth's gravity. They don't feel any gravitational forces because everything is being pulled in exactly the same way. As you get closer and closer to the center of the hole, though, you start to feel tidal gravitational forces. Imagine that your feet are closer to the center than your head. The gravitational pull gets stronger as you get closer to the center of the hole, so your feet feel a stronger pull than your head does. This force is called a tidal force because it is exactly like the forces that cause the tides on Earth. These tidal forces get more and more intense as you get closer to the center, and eventually they will rip you apart. For a very large black hole like the one you are falling into, the tidal forces are not really noticeable until you get within about 600,000 kilometers of the center. Note that this is after you've crossed the horizon. If you were falling into a smaller black hole, say one that weighed as much as the Sun, tidal forces would start to make you quite uncomfortable. When you were about 6,000 kilometers away from the center, and you would have been torn apart by them long before you crossed the horizon. That is why we decided to let you jump into a big black hole instead of a small one. We wanted you to survive at least until you got inside. What do you see as you are falling in? Surprisingly, you don't necessarily see anything particularly interesting. Images of faraway objects may be distorted in strange ways, since the black hole's gravity bends light, but that's about it. In particular, nothing special happens at the moment when you cross the horizon. Even after you cross the horizon, you can still see things on the outside. After all, the light from the things on the outside can still reach you. No one on the outside can see you, of course, since the light from you can't escape past the horizon. How long does the whole process take? Well, of course, it depends on how far away you start from. Let's say you start at rest from a point whose distance from the singularity is 10 times the black hole's radius. And for a million solar mass black hole, it takes you about 8 minutes to reach the horizon. Once you've gotten that far, it takes you only another 7 seconds to hit the singularity. By the way, this time scales with the size of the black hole. So if you jumped into a smaller black hole, your time of death would be that much sooner. Once you've crossed the horizon, in your remaining 7 seconds, you might panic and start to fire your rockets in a desperate attempt to avoid the singularity. Unfortunately, it is hopeless, since the singularity lies in your future, and there is no way to avoid your future. In fact, the harder you fire your rockets, the sooner you hit the singularity. It is best just to sit back and enjoy the ride. My friend Penelope is sitting still, at a safe distance, watching me fall into the black hole. What does she see? Penelope sees things quite differently from you. As you get closer and closer to the horizon, she sees you move more and more slowly. In fact, no matter how long she waits, she will never quite see you reach the horizon. In fact, more or less the same thing can be said about the material that formed the black hole in the first place. Suppose the black hole formed from a collapsing star. As the material that is to form the black hole collapses, Penelope sees it get smaller and smaller, approaching but never quite reaching the Schwarzschild radius. This is why black holes were originally called frozen stars, because they seem to freeze at a size just slightly bigger than the Schwarzschild radius. Why does she see things this way? The best way to think about it is that it is really just an optical illusion. It doesn't really take an infinite amount of time for the black hole to form, and it doesn't really take an infinite amount of time for you to cross the horizon. If you don't believe me, just try jumping in. You'll be across the horizon in 8 minutes, and crushed to death mere seconds later. As you get closer and closer to the horizon, the light that you are emitting takes longer and longer to climb back to reach Penelope. In fact, the radiation you emit as you cross the horizon will hover right there at the horizon forever, and never reach her. You've long since passed through the horizon, with the light signal telling her that you won't reach her for an infinitely long time. There's another way to look at this whole business. In a sense, time really does pass more slowly near the horizon than it does far away. Suppose you take your spaceship and ride down to a point just outside the horizon, and then just hover there for a while, burning enormous amounts of fuel to keep yourself from falling in. Then you fly back out and rejoin Penelope. You will find that she has aged much more than you during the whole process. Time passed more slowly for you than it did for her.
Good day, this is Professor Will, CBMD PhD on Cosmology and Astrophysics. Well, hope you enjoyed listening and have a great day.